Tonight on Oxygen Tango Live, we go deep with Sachin Mehta coming up. Welcome back to Oxygen Tango Live. Megan, how's it going?
Dave, it's pretty good.
Do you want to give us a number, or is the number?
I'm a 6.5 today.
Oh, really? Out of 10?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Not bad. I think my pandemic, cap is 7. So.
You've never been higher than a 7 the whole pandemic.
I don't think so.
We're coming at you live again from an undisclosed location. We are streaming on YouTube and Facebook. If you want to get in the chat, we recommend YouTube. We'll leave out the rest of our preamble. We actually haven't dropped the stream in a while, so we'll stop preparing people for that.
So, Dave, why are we interviewing Sachin tonight?
Well, longtime fans of the show will remember that Sachin was, I think, on 4 out of the first 5 episodes or something. The whole thing kind of seemed like a joke back then.
or temporary.
Temporary, the pandemic. We thought this would go on for 2 weeks. We'll do 3 guests a night. Now we do 2 guests a month, but that was back when we were doing 3 guests a night. And we had a number of storylines with Sachin that we would get into. Things that were going on with him. We were sort of playing with check-in with Sachin's love life and health and whatnot. And then we kind of switched over to this other interview format. But Sachin never got the full treatment, the interview treatment.
Yeah, and he deserves it.
He deserves it.
Gosh darn it.
And that's why we're having him back on tonight.
Well, I'm excited.
I'm really excited too. We usually alternate these interviews. Megan went last week, so I'm going to go this week. Do we have anything else to add?
I don't think so. Let's get to it.
All right. Well, without further ado, we are bringing on Sachin. Let's see if this works. Sachin, there you are. It worked perfectly. You look amazing.
Oh, thank you, Dave.
Finally, we're alone.
Flattery gets you everywhere.
Finally, we can talk.
Finally, we can talk. Just me and you.
I mean, you're obviously much closer with Megan, but here I am interviewing you. What do you make of that?
Well, I might be close with Megan, but you and I have always had a sort of psychic bond, I feel.
True.
So,
True.
Yeah, and now we're just going to cash in on that a little bit, I think.
You might be closer with Megan, but you and I are more connected. Would it be fair to say?
Yeah, I might be close with Megan, but I like you.
Oh, I see. Okay, good. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Yeah, me too. I was like talking with you.
I think it was, it was back in March or April. So,
yeah,
8 or 9 months since the last time you came on the show. We thought this was all going to be over soon.
Yeah.
I think we were tracking this story where you had met someone your mom had told you were going to be lucky in love.
Yeah.
And for the next 30 days. Let me just check the chat here to see if. Okay, I guess they'll tell us if the audio isn't working. And that luck had manifested itself in the form of someone you met in a video game.
That's right. Right. Yeah. In retrospect, it all seems like folly, doesn't it? Like we were so innocent back then.
Yeah, we had no idea what we were in for. Every day I would check the numbers and I would sort of follow the curve in my head and I would say, 2 more weeks. So
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like I've aged. I feel like I've aged.
Me too.
Yeah. Everything seems so silly. And things are still silly, sure. But man, I feel older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe when the pandemic's over, we'll feel young again.
Maybe when the pandemic is older, I feel like we'll all come out like Gandalf the White. Like we're all going in Gandalf the Gray.
It's true.
And then this whole experience is Gandalf and who was that? That fiery beast falling into the pit.
Right. You shall not pass.
Yes, you shall not pass. And by the time you come out, we'll be different, but we'll be the same.
That's That's a really great metaphor. We're turning into, we've been battling the whatever it was.
Balroth.
The Balrog. Amazing. Nice pull, Sachin. The Balrog. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
they went kind of hurtling into the abyss. I've never actually read those books. I sort of pretend that I have, but what I actually had were these cassette tapes as a kid.
Cassette tapes, Dave.
And it was like, I think it was like 6 for The Hobbit and maybe 18 for The Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
And
that's amazing.
both sides of the tape, and they would do the different voices and everything. But obviously not every word of the book. But yeah, so I got to know it well, and then when I saw the movies, it actually seemed very much like the tapes. It almost seemed like they had used the tapes more than they had used the
Oh,
books.
wow.
I knew
read
all the lines in the movie, even though I had just read the tapes.
Yeah.
Listened to the tapes.
I read the books in one summer, and I was very young, and they were very complicated books because they had a lot of proper nouns,
Yeah.
one after another. Like, here is Theodore, son of Algador.
Right.
You know, and like the Game of Thrones kind of nomikers. But maybe if I read it now, I'd understand it more. But no, my knowledge of Lord of the Rings is mostly from the movies.
From the movies.
Yeah, mostly from. I did read the books, but I don't remember anything.
Well, they say that he was like Tolkien was a linguist, and it all kind of started as this project to see if he could invent a bunch of languages, and they were actually real languages. They had this sort of
Yeah.
grammar all worked out, even though he only used 5% of it in the books. Where do you come down comparing Lord of the Rings to Game of Thrones? Is that even just a blasphemous question, or?
No, it's not a blasphemous question. You know, they both involve dragons. But I feel like Lord of the Rings was just, there was a lot of meaning behind it. There was a lot of deep meaning behind Lord of the Rings. I didn't find it in Game of Thrones necessarily. You know, for me, Lord of the Rings dealt with ego and the sacrifice of the ego as represented by the ring. It dealt with these armies clashing, and from my understanding, it was supposed to represent. He was inspired by his experiences in World War One. That kind of, you know, being overwhelmed by evil, but still having to do your job. All those kinds of themes, man. Game of Thrones was all right, but
You don't think it holds up? Well, especially the sort of failure to land here. You know what? I'm going to run out of power if I don't quickly rectify this issue here, so just bear with me.
talking, I can just keep talking about Lord of the Rings.
Well, no, I want to follow up on. I actually want to circle back to this business of the ring and the ego. Would you care to expand?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the few movies, right? The few stories where the goal of the protagonist is he's given all the power in the world,
right?
And anybody who has this ring will be all powerful, but it's the weakest character's job to take this power and to burn it in the fires of Mordor. And it's about giving up power rather than acquiring power, acquiring any kind of skills.
Because anyone who actually does try to use the power of the ring, it's a slippery slope that ends in disaster. So he doesn't even use the ring to destroy the ring. He doesn't use the ring at all, right? In the end,
doesn't use the ring. He slips up a few times, as we all do.
Right.
But he actually uses it.
And it never helps him. Certainly.
It never helps him.
Right.
It's always attracting evil forces, right? But I think one of the points of the story for me, it was his pluck and his inherent goodness that carried the day through insurmountable evil, that helped him carry the weight of that power all the way to the fires of Mordor, and he finally dumped it in.
So you're talking about Frodo now, not Bilbo. No, because Bilbo, Bilbo, he did use it, and it was a little bit. He got away with using it. Yeah, he wasn't saving the world. He was just finding.
Bilbo wasn't saving the world.
Right.
He was. I forget what he was doing. He found the ring, and he went on an adventure, and he found the ring, and that was okay.
Yeah, but he didn't even know what he had found. I don't think till the later books. Look up. See, already I'm talking like I've read the books, but it is all from the tapes and the movies. And actually, I found the movies got pretty boring actually by the end. The first one was amazing. It blew my mind, and by the end, I couldn't take it anymore.
Wow. Well, okay. Geez, Dave. You and I, once I get my new television, we can watch it.
Oh.
Juntos. Together.
So we have a comment from Nicole. As long as they don't pull out Magic the Gathering. Megan says, this conversation is super dorky so far. Nicole says, as long as they don't pull out Magic the Gathering, it's all right. I'd resent that heavily, and if I had Magic the Gathering, I would pull it out right now, just out of spite. I'm not sure. Yeah.
All right, Megan. Well, we can talk about something cool. God. What do you-
She's jealous because in 45 episodes, Megan and I have never managed the kind of pre-show banter that you and I are delivering right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always impressed with like what people come on the show to talk about. Yeah, it's always impressive. So good job. I'm sorry. I can talk about Lord of the Rings.
No, I was really enjoying it actually.
Me too, Dave.
I felt like Game of Thrones. I don't know. It was cool that every family had a house. You got to see sort of different principles sort of tested over time. Every house had like a slogan and kind of like a rule of thumb, and you got to see them all kind of compete with each other. From a TV standpoint, I thought like just the fact that they were willing to kill off major characters just like set it apart from other shows. Once you'd seen that a few times, I don't know, maybe it didn't seem so. But I feel like they've been doing that in books for a long time, that no one had just really pulled it off in a TV show before. Kind of wonder if they hadn't done that, would everyone have been so into it, Yeah.
Yeah.
You're so not used to seeing that in a TV show.
Right. It was always shocking. I watched it partly just to see who they would kill off. I mean, that's how they hooked me. Yeah. But
didn't seem to deliver the ending. I think the ending ultimately made the conversation almost not even worth having. Maybe.
I think so. I think there's a sadness to it. I think that there was a sadness to that show. Because I mean, and it is zooming out a little bit. Every house just wanted power.
Yeah.
And recognized it like, yeah, that's all of us. That's every country. That's each of us. And now we were going to participate in the thing that we're all living in anyway.
Right. Ultimately, very bleak. I mean, there was no real.
Only bleak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't even clear. Yeah. All right.
Bleak like this pandemic. Womp womp.
Very nice. Thanks for bringing it home. All right. Well, should we start with the interview?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we should start. Yeah. You ready?
Well, a lot of people watching the show probably actually have no idea who you are. So we like to start. I mean, let's be honest. Those people will probably be watching a little later. They're probably not watching live, but they count. In fact, most of the viewers watch later on. So, how long have you been dancing tango? Where do you live? What are your basic characteristics?
Basic stats?
Yeah.
All right. Started in 2006, which I think, if I remember correctly, that's the same time you started, right?
Pretty close.
And yet, I've only really met you, I feel like, in the last 2 years. Which is, men don't meet each other in tango.
And why is that? Why is that?
I don't know. I'm always envious of women's experience. I mean, this is on a very particular angle of this, right? How women can find each other in tango as beginners, and either in groups of 2, 3, or 4, and they're very social. But like in 14 years of tango, it's been hard to find male colleagues, and I think that's partly because for the most part, leaders, although that's changing, and I guess we're just sort of trained to show up and ask people to dance, and then we leave. There hasn't been like fraternization.
Yeah.
I don't know. Why do you think?
I feel like I almost did more bonding with men early on, just like we're in this crazy thing together and we're both beginners, like that, or kind of early on in classes, I met some people that, we would go to classes or milongas together, like as beginners. But yeah, then it kind of evolves into like, I think a lot of it is everyone's just so obsessed with dancing that we're very set on dancing when we're at events together, and And so so there's not really maybe a lot of time for conversations to develop. If men aren't dancing a lot with each other, then they're not chatting between the songs.
Yeah.
Potentially some, not between you and me ever, but we're just speaking in general here. Potentially some competitiveness or
Sure.
or resentment between men in the tango scene. Sometimes I feel like everyone thinks they have the secrets, maybe, and they don't want to share the secrets, or they don't. I don't know. I yeah. I think in general, yeah, men tend to socialize with each other a lot less.
Yeah. Totally. I
But I
think
actually
it's
think both. I think men tend to meet more. I think women actually tend to meet more men though than other women. I mean, although they do meet other women more than men meet other men, in general, I think the people that are dancing with each other tend to get to know each other. Obviously, there's exceptions, but
yeah, that's a good point. I also feel like men are conditioned, or to we well, I'll back up. It would be nice if men did talk to each other, because I feel like men bring to the dance floor a lot of insecurities, but nobody admits it. At least certainly when I started in tango. I feel like it's changing now, but I think a lot of men are scared and they are kind of insecure. But when you show up at the milonga, you're just supposed to be running and gunning,
right.
and I've it's strange though. Every single time I have talked to a guy, and we get to the level of talking about what difficulties we're having, I've generally felt like they not only identified, but it was sort of like a weight off their shoulders. Like, yes, I agree, and thank you for mentioning it, because I feel the same way.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it's up to me and you to fill that gap, Dave.
I agree. Well, there's no time like right now.
It's no time like here. Yeah,
Megan says lots of women are dancing with other women, not as men dancing with other men. True.
it's true.
I wonder if this whole dynamic in general is reflective of society. I mean, are men in the society at large forming close relationships as adults less frequently than women? I'm not sure.
Oh, definitely. I think, yeah, men having close friendships with men is difficult. It happens, but and I think it certainly happens when you get older, as men get more frail and they lose their salt and vinegar,
Yeah.
and they become a little bit more humble and a little bit more vulnerable. Then they start interacting with men in a way that's more, humane, rather than just like slapping each other on the ass and I don't know.
Yep.
People do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or like being teammates. I feel like that a lot of times that's what comes most naturally to some men, but not. It's a fine line between that and a friendship.
Yeah, yeah. And there are no rules for male friendships. I feel that you can't. If a male friend, let's say, disappoints you in some way, there's no real rules for addressing that. You're just supposed to suck it up and just move on and not act like you're hurt, because he was just a guy,
Right.
and you just move on from that. And it can happen, dozens of times in a year, let's say, but oh well, and that's too bad.
We don't have the tool. We don't have the tools for repairing our relationships when they become frayed.
Certainly, yeah. We don't have the tools for repairing them. We don't even have the words to address it. To say to another, if I went up to a high school friend of mine, one of these guys I grew up with, and we drink together, we play basketball together, it would be hard for me to imagine a scenario where I say to him, "Hey, man, you really hurt me."
Right.
I mean, emotionally, not physically. That was kind of messed up what you did. Now it's changing now. Well, it's changing in my life, of course, but certainly back then, it was just, you're kind of just wandering through a jungle of confusion and just having to suck it down and suck it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there have been some attempts to address this in tango. leaders groups, men's groups, places for men to get together and be vulnerable.
Yeah, I've only heard of this. I've of course never been a part of one.
I don't think I have either, but I've observed
Yeah,
or heard of it. Yeah, I think there's something there, though.
there's something there. You and I, we should just come up to the brink of a solution and just be like, well, there's probably something there.
We leave that as an exercise for the reader, for the viewer. Ricardo Cabrera chimes in, learning to dance tango with men is one of the big things that takes place at Oxygen.
That's true.
Min Fei chimes in, it is okay to feel hurt. Apostrophe D.
Yeah.
Or
Hey,
rather,
Hey.
semicolon D.
Man, I miss those guys.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, just hearing those names, Minfei and Ricardo,
Yeah.
it's wild. Like how much of a connection you build with people. You don't need to have a deep conversation with every single one of them, but just having them in your environment, week after week,
Yes.
knowing that they're a dependable face that you can just walk into a room and feel comfortable with. Yeah, it's profound.
Well, the Torrance crowd is coming out in force tonight, and it's no wonder, since you were teaching there for several months before the pandemic.
Yeah, Torrance. Yeah, it's our little tango outpost.
Yeah.
I always likened it to like our little Deep Space Nine. Not to nerd it up some more.
Uh-huh.
Nine is?
I mean, no, not really.
Yes, you do. It's a Star Trek reference.
Oh, that's right. Oh, right. No, it is actually. I know that I recognize that now, but no, I'd forgotten
In my
that.
imagination, in my fantasy, there's the galaxy of tango, but we had a little outpost out in Torrance, and I liked imagining that. Maybe there was tango classes closer, but I don't want to hear about it. I want to keep
No,
my fantasy.
it was really a remote subculture there. Like there were people that went there that had never danced tango anywhere else.
That's
And there were
right.
probably a lot of people who danced a lot in LA that had never been there. I mean, almost everybody. So yeah, it was really quite a little experiment of its own.
Well, thanks for having me there.
Well, thanks for.
It keeps me off the streets, high risk, Dave.
Well, you're also very effective there. I mean, let's be honest.
Oh.
We didn't do it to keep you off the streets.
Oh.
I mean, not entirely, at least. All right. Okay. Well, it's 8:25.
So, yeah,
We've gotten through about 1% of this interview. You were still supposed to be situating yourself in the tango world. So you've been dancing since 2006.
2006.
And wait, where were you born? Have you always lived in LA? What?
Yes, I am born and raised in Los Angeles.
Okay.
I was born in East Hollywood, Los Feliz area.
I'm always really intrigued by people that grow up in LA because everyone else moves there. What is that? I mean, it was normal to you, obviously, but yeah, what do you make of that experience?
I mean, what do I make of that? What are you guys doing moving here? It's
Well, just if nothing else, the fact that almost everyone you're growing up with moved there like that year and is trying to be.
Yeah.
I mean, were you conscious of the entertainment industry as a thing as a child, or is that?
yeah, it was always in the background.
It
right?
was
Like,
always in the background. I always wondered what that was like.
what's that?
I always wondered what that was like to grow up with that.
Right, it was always in our backyard. It was like it wasn't just that the Oscars were on TV. It was that the Oscars were on TV, and my dad would have to take a different route home from work in downtown, and
Right.
he would say that place is over there at the Shrine Auditorium, wherever, and we would imagine it. I feel like it was always kind of pulsating.
And you would also have would you have kids in school like in commercials and
No,
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 it didn't touch your school.
no, it didn't touch us that way.
Okay.
No, I grew up in a town called Cerritos. It's about half an hour east of LAX, which is where I live now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Cerritos is famous for its auto square.
Oh, so you were born in Hollywood but grew up in Cerritos.
Yeah, that's right.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, I went to schools out here. Spent a year and a half abroad working as a public defender. And then that was after I was a public defender that I came back and found tango, and been doing it since.
Well, I want to get into that, but we have a question
Yeah.
from Nyan. Ask Sachin what was the biggest challenge as a tango instructor, and no polite answers.
Man, that's a tough question, Nyan. Nyan. It was, I think the hardest thing was trying to keep it fresh and keep it interesting, which is probably something, why even try that? People come for tango, right? But I would always try to take something and break it down, and sometimes it wouldn't work. Those guys would probably remember, one day I brought in these two sticks, and I put little heads on them and little faces on them, and I tried to use that to explain how I view sacadas. Man, and I gotta tell you, I thought I was brilliant. Oh man, these guys would be so impressed, and it fell so flat. So, but aside from that, to be really honest, I like teaching tango, or even just interacting with the teaching of tango, and just because it is that there are no huge challenges compared to the rest of my life.
Right. So
Yeah.
it could only be so bad for that, almost by definition.
Right.
Right.
And that's been my view about tango. I used to get.
Sounds like a lot of trauma just went right over your head in your class, Sachin. You didn't even notice it, probably.
That's true. I need to implement last week's class.
Exactly. I was just thinking.
No, actually, I was observing. I did watch last week's show with I believe it was Misha and Megan, and that's something I got to add, to my quiver, which is paying attention to trauma. Is it possible that trauma just fully went over my head? Yeah.
Perhaps it's possible that you guide the class without even realizing it in such a way that generates no trauma in anybody.
Oh man, I doubt that, but I like the thought. Thank you.
Well, that actually brings us. Well, I was planning on going more in order, but that actually does lead into our next topic. Well, Nicole says the sticks visual for cicadas were helpful, actually.
Thank you, Nicole, and that is why Nicole is my favorite students.
But yeah, so the toughest part for you is if you're trying to make up new material and not teach classes that you've already taught a million times before. Sometimes you kind of strike out and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like I don't even want to call them students. They're just like my colleagues. They're pretty giving and they're pretty forgiving. And I think ultimately they understand what I'm trying to get at, and they're great at filling in the blanks. At least that's how it is in Torrance.
Well, you bring up a good point. Now, actually, there's another thing I want to get back to, but now I want to get back to this. This idea that they're not students, they're your colleagues. I know this was a concept that Mitra was passionate about.
Yeah.
That I think developed in her mind over time, but a pretty radical concept that not only is sort of a teacher-student, sort of a star teacher with a ring of students, not only is that model not ideal, it's actually in her mind, Mitra should speak for herself. I'm just paraphrasing as best I can. Almost counterproductive or unworkable somehow. The dynamic of the teacher kind of put on a pedestal above everybody else, and we're receiving their. In her view, the teaching is much more of collaboration, and everyone should be much more on the same plane. And that it seems like it's related to what you were just saying, that you don't really even think of the people that come to your class as students.
No, I don't, and I don't think that's just lip service either. I can speak to my own experience. First of all, I had great instructors, and I'm very grateful for them. But the teacher-student dynamic for me fed into the sense of all right, here I am. I need to acquire this information and then express it, and I'll either succeed or fail. And then I'll go to Milonga and I'll either succeed or fail at expressing it there. If I view it as colleagues, it's more like I'm shifting the emphasis from almost like test taking and competitiveness, and shifting it over to community. And so we're still going to learn, but I feel like it's almost like we're shifting our axis a little bit towards community. And I wish I had that when I was a young Tango buck. I think it would have made things easier. And I feel like it just makes for better dancing. I think people are happier.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like the teacher-student description also, well, and the fact that the class costs money, it also creates a dynamic where some students feel like, I paid for this class, I need to be delivered my money's worth. And that's not necessarily going to require anything from me. I'm the one that paid after all. And that can be, I think, a counterproductive dynamic also.
Yeah, I think so too. Every once in a while, you get a student or a colleague, but really a student who I paid my money and I want A, B, and C. And I understand it, but it does make me it's draining for me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, okay, let me just access my files and give you some info, and then you'll be done with me and you'll get your money's worth. It doesn't feel, I don't know, it doesn't feel great.
And it also just might sort of reflect a misunderstanding of how at least the process of learning tango works, possibly the process of learning anything, is it can't be delivered to a passive recipient. It has to be searched for and discovered, and you have to put in energy if you really want to get anything out of it. I mean,
100%. Yeah, because it's not a pattern. That's one of the first things we learn about tango. There's no patterns. If there's no patterns, that means that it's this other thing, which is, I do think it's about attitude and cohesiveness and community and sure, knowledge. But no.
Well, Nyan says you made a special trip to Michael's to make the sticks in this class. Is that true?
Yeah, I did. Went to Michael's.
Confirmed, went to Michael's.
I bought styrofoam balls. And they're right now, I think, I don't think they exist anymore. But yeah, that's right. Thank you, Nyan, for recognizing.
All right, well, leaping wildly onto another topic and abandoning the chronology of your tango journey for the moment. Yeah. So you mentioned that, maybe you're oblivious to all the trauma being generated in your class, or maybe you're not generating any trauma, which made me remember that you practice, I don't want to misrepresent this, so I'm just going to get you started and then maybe you'll explain it. You practice a religion called Jainism.
Yeah, Jainism. I'm not really practicing, but I was raised in a Jain environment, they call it. Jainism is spelled Jain. It's a little tiny religion in India. It's a prominent religion, it registers, but it is small. And yeah, it's I kind of consider myself more of an atheist-ish, not an asshole atheist, just my day to day. I just kind of, with Jainism, I think the biggest thing is a nonviolence aspect of it. That's kind of, if you have to understand Jainism, that's kind of, I think, one of the biggest pillars of the whole thing. But it's manifest nonviolence, nonviolence to all living things, to inanimate objects, nonviolence in thought, action, and speech. And really, I think the biggest way that comes up in my life is just I'm vegetarian. And that's it. I wonder if it's wired me in a certain way. It is very much like Buddhism, but like I said, I don't. It's not something I advertise or anybody asks me about, but just kind of there, humming in the background of my life.
Now, some religions, they kind of sprout out of the same trunk. I think Islam, Judaism, and Christianity kind of sprouted out of the same trunk. Does Jainism share a trunk with any other religions, or it's totally independent?
That's a great question, Dave. I'll tell you what. I can tell you a quick thing about where it came from. This is what was told to me. back in the day, like 500, 600 years BC, there was all these people wandering around Tibet and India trying to figure out what the meaning of life was because they were frustrated with the materialism and the power grabs and et cetera, et cetera. You know, feelings that we're all familiar with. And they were all studying these like Vedic traditions of like meditation, right? So they were all just like nomads. And the story goes that there was one group that were like, you know what, we're going to follow the Vedic traditions, but really life is about experiencing the sadness and the happiness. They became the Buddhists. And there was another another branch. They were like, we're going to follow the Vedic traditions, and we're going to still, you know, adhere to a lot of the gods and that came from those. And they went off and became the Hindus. But there was this one third group. They were a little bit, you know, they're much smaller, and they were like, you know what, we're going to follow the Vedic traditions, and you know what, anything that you enjoy is kind of a form of attachment, so we're not going to enjoy anything. It became the Jains.
I see. So,
yeah.
Okay, so Jainism, Buddhism, and Hinduism, you could argue, did come from the same trunk.
Oh yeah, no, I've been to caves in India, the Ellora Ajanta caves in India, where you can see the symbology of all three of those religions in the caves, you know, in the paintings and the artwork. It's
and they share common fundamental elements also.
They do. I mean, they at this point they are
non-attachment, for example, is a concept that, you know, I recognize from Buddhism at least.
Sure, and we certainly overlap with them.
Right, I see.
Right. Yeah.
So connect the non-attachment to the non-violence for me.
Well, those are kind of two independent. Well, I think of them as sort of that would then be the second pillar, which is the non-attachment to anything. It's kind of a harsh rule, you know,
because it leads to suffering.
Well, more practically, like there are Jains in India. Like if you like salt and pepper on your food, if you like it, that means that you're attached to it.
Oh, right.
No salt and pepper on your food. You know, it's.
I guess. Oh, right. I guess I meant isn't one of the reasons why one would practice non-attachment is to avoid suffering, because attachment will inevitably lead to suffering.
100%. Yes.
Is that the main reason?
That's essentially it. If you're attached to something,
you're going to suffer sooner or later.
Then nobody can. If you're not attached to something, nobody can take it away and make you feel sad or suffer. You know.
I want to get actually back to that, so please bookmark that, the non-attachment. But I want to read these comments. A lot of people in the chat. You've really turned out the live audience, Sachin.
What?
Parry Mariposa chimes in. David, please ask him, how does he keep his positive attitude in the last 14 years and that he did not let it get to his head? Can he help others and share that with us?
Oh, hi, Parry. I know she's one of those folks I've seen. I haven't spoken to that much. I'll try when the pandemic ends. Well, it hasn't always been positive, for sure. You know, Tango hasn't been always happy. It has been happy the last few years. In the last X number of years, you know, I think the happiness has increased. Once I started letting go of pressuring myself to be good and just enjoying the dance and enjoying the person I'm dancing with. And that's, you know, and that's a lesson I learned, I think, the hard way. I wish somebody just told me that. But like, you know, I was always, how do I get better? How do I get better? I suck. Of course I told myself I sucked. You know, when you're starting out and everybody in the room is, quote, better than you. Of course. And it's not a great feeling. It was a terrible feeling. But, you know, different things came into my life that made me convinced that I have enough stress in my regular world. And I'm just going to use this activity just to have fun and to enjoy the people I meet. That's it. So I can honestly say now, I don't care about being a great dancer. I do not care. And when somebody asks me, like, how do I become a good dancer? I bristle. I'm like, I don't have an answer for you because I don't fundamentally care.
Yep.
But if they make a joke, you know, if that to me is much more valuable.
A sense of humor.
Sense of humor, sense of the absurd. There is this piece of advice that MacLeod gave me when I studied. I was her student for a little bit, and she gave me a great piece of. I always remember what she told me because I was frustrated. This is maybe 10 years ago, and she told me, that tango is like a little. It's like a little bird. And you have to keep it in your own cage or inside your own heart and protect it from everybody else, from everything else that tells you that that's not good or it's not worth doing. You have to kind of maintain your own personal tango bird. And I always remember that, I always remember when mine starts going other places. So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
There you have it.
Yeah.
Keep your own tango bird. Increase suffering in other parts of your life so as to make tango seem less stressful in comparison. And then non-attachment to performance or status.
That's right. Increase the suffering in other parts of your life.
Get some perspective, for God's sakes.
Yeah, get some perspective. Declare bankruptcy in the real world, and then tango will seem very very, very nice.
Nayan asks, so is vegetarianism more tied to South Asian culture or Jainism?
Oh, I think it's tied to more Jainism, I think, because, in India, there are a lot of Hindu folks and Muslim folks, and of course, meat is a part of their diet.
Okay.
In some form. So, yeah, I think it's more of a Jain thing. Yeah.
Christine,
and Jain and Buddhist.
Christine is in the chat. Just saying hello, also.
What's up, Christine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So do you practice non-attachment currently?
Do I practice non-attachment? Man, I am not great at it. But I don't. Yeah, I'd probably give myself a 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10.
Yeah, I did start this conversation off by saying I'm getting a new TV, and I have a TV. I should not want a TV, but I want a bigger TV to watch The Crown on.
Well, maybe we could look at it this way: you getting a new TV is showing that you're not attached to the first TV.
That's right. That's right.
It seems like a good example of non-attachment.
That's right. Score 1 for the Jain side.
Jainism in action.
Jainism in action.
So, nonviolence of action, I'm sure we could talk about, but at least I think we all have a picture of what that looks like. Nonviolence of speech, I think also we have sort of an idea of what violence in speech looks like.
Yeah.
What is violence in thought?
That's a tough one. And I think that it's interesting, right? Because I'm an attorney, and my job is a lot about violence in thought. I feel because I'm litigating and I'm in courtrooms, so you do have to kind of render violence in your speech or writing.
Certainly, an example of what in that context what you would consider violence? Because I've heard you describe things as violent in some ways sometimes that I don't know if everyone would. You have to think about it for a second to sort of get it, what you mean by that. And there is something there. So,
yes, sometimes I do describe things as violent that are, but to me, I think, there. I don't know if this is the right way to approach it, but in the old Jain mythology, there are certain monks, the hardcore monks. And by the way, let me just caveat this: I am by no means a practicing Jain. I'm a vegetarian. And I'm read up on it. But there is a story about, why monks don't, if they eat fruit, they don't pluck it off the tree. They only grab it from the ground. And why is that? It's because when they pluck it from the tree, that in itself is an act of violence. It's almost like you're causing damage and entropy where it was going to happen on its own. And so, sometimes I'll look at a situation like that feels violent, even though, it's just something relatively harmless. You know,
So almost any kind of interference with could be considered.
any kind of uh, assertion of the ego. When the ego reaches out for something, literally in this case, reaching out for fruit and saying, violent. Let it drop to the ground and then take it
I see.
from the ground.
So it's not only the action of taking the fruit, but the impetus for taking the fruit is coming from the ego, and that makes it violent.
Yeah, that makes it violent in this context. Yeah. Now, look, I grab fruit off of trees.
Sure.
I mean, I don't remember the
You're
last time
you're
I
a
grabbed.
terrible Jainist. We've established that.
Okay, good. I just want to establish I'm a terrible Jain. Yeah, but in essence, yeah, not nonviolence of thought. I think if you practice it long enough, the ideal is to get to a point where if someone has wronged you, you immediately forgive them, and you aren't thinking about vengeance or jealousy or any kind of these negative. Those are all also forms of violence. So goes the theory,
So someone might recognize. First of all, I just want to mention Roy Nyberg chimed in. I think maybe being quoted by Min Fei in the chat, but I think saying don't overthink the TV.
Thanks, Roy.
So
4K, Roy.
Oh, Min Fei is saying don't overthink the TV. I think then Roy put it in the chat, just to clear that up.
Got it. I appreciate that.
Is that the same? How is that the same and different from maybe concepts we have from other religions, like turn the other cheek,
I think
concepts of forgiveness? Is there maybe this idea of the ego makes it different?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. I'm not a biblical scholar, but pride cometh
Before the fall.
Pride cometh before the fall. Pride being sort of for me, just a harder version of an ego.
Right.
Yeah.
So would you notice, I mean, I think everyone does this in their own way, but you would notice thoughts that you were having as being violent thoughts, and you would just try to notice them, or you would or you would try to change them?
When I was a kid, certainly. I was such a good student as a kid. I was an obedient, good student. Whatever a teacher told me, I took in, and I took it to heart. I wasn't goofing off. So, when they said nonviolence in thought, I would walk around a little stressed out, like, oh my God, I'm thinking violent, I'm thinking something negative. I think as I've become an adult, I've definitely, again, moved into the bad Jane category. But I feel a pull sometimes. I do critique myself, like, why am I thinking this? And sometimes I feel like it's perfectly great to get good and angry about something. I'm a big advocate of that. But I do introspect, and probably that introspection comes from my upbringing.
Do you think
Sure.
that just kind of studying this religion makes you more sensitive when you see other people being violent?
I wouldn't say it's a religion per se. I think I'm just very sensitive to violence in general. Probably just from my upbringing, just the way I was raised, the kind of household I was raised in. It was a little bit rough, and I'll just leave it sort of there. But I think life experience has made me physically sensitive to violence. Like if somebody's yelling at the Starbucks, I immediately seize up. And I have to breathe through it because I'm attuned to that, and something I'm working on because I can't seize up every time, two people that I don't know are in conflict 30 feet away.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, but it's an interesting. Yeah, I haven't completely cracked that nut.
And that wouldn't be the teaching. What would the scholars, the Jainist scholars, even want you to do in that situation? Not that you would be. I'm assuming not that you would be, just sort of thrown. Not that you would get really upset when you saw violence in other people, right? You would try to perceive and process that in a nonviolent way somehow,
Yeah,
right?
I think from that perspective, they would say, well, don't, that's about you, and you're definitely not going to get involved. But yeah, that is. Yeah, I don't know what they would say exactly about that, but yeah, huh.
Well,
Yeah.
Nyan says we could have a Sachin proverb of the day cards with these quotes.
Is that right?
Megan says, regarding nonviolent thought, there's a similar tenet in Christianity that thinking something is the same as doing it. I've heard her talk about this a lot. That she, as a kid, would be very stressed to catch herself thinking about something and thinking that was as bad as doing it.
I think that's probably the best way to put it. I think I grew up as a stressed kid in a way, thinking about that in the same way Megan just described. Yeah, for sure. I used to fight it. Now I just accept it. That's who I am.
Sure.
Yeah, that's who I am. It's fine. Maybe it's a beautiful part of me, Dave.
It is. Well, no, maybe about it. It is a beautiful part of you.
Just wanted to hear it from you.
We didn't really get any of the stuff that I wanted to get to. We might have to do another one of these. But I have always been really interested in this, so I'm glad we're getting a chance to talk about this.
What else is on that list? What should we?
Well, maybe we'll just close with this. I mean, I wanted to talk about law and what it's like to be a lawyer and
Yeah.
to get into your career a little bit, but I don't think we have time.
No.
I've heard that you have a term for a certain kind of tango dancer, a true believer.
No, that's don't get me in trouble.
You don't want to get into this?
No, I don't want to get in trouble. But yeah, that's
Okay.
true believers.
All right, we didn't mention this in the pre-interview, so.
Did I mention this? Yes. Yes.
It's someone that takes tango very seriously.
Yes. And I know them. They're my friends. I think the term true believer is more about me. When I meet a true believer, they're usually it's usually like, wow, why am I not like that?
Right.
It's been 14 years. Why am I not a true believer? But I usually encounter them maybe third or fourth year dancers, maybe second year dancers, and they might say something like, hey, how's it going? Loud traffic, I'm a 4 or 5, right? Yes, but I had my tango playlist. I cannot get enough of this. I can't dance enough. I need more. I eat tango. I breathe tango. And I'm just looking at them like I was just talking about traffic.
Right.
And it's that moment. I think it really is about me. I think I came with that term just because, like, why am I not buried in this? I would like to be buried in something.
Right.
It's not my personality, I guess.
So you stand apart from it, but you're envious in a way of this level of obsession.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah. I think we successfully put a good spin on that.
Gave people an idea of what.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we'll get more into that another time.
Yeah. True believers.
Maybe I'll just close up with. Ricardo chimes in saying it is a beautiful part of you, Sachin, just to reconfirm what we already confirmed.
Thanks, Ricardo.
I believe he's referring to your tendency to have violent thoughts and then notice them.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Nyan says non-attachment to good or bad thoughts, like mindfulness and just noticing. So you don't
sure.
have to fix the thoughts. You just notice that you're having them.
You're aware, right? Right. This interview went strangely, not in a bad way. It got more what's the word? Spiritual slash religious than I thought.
And I was surprised by that too. I was surprised
Yeah,
by that too. Yep. I'm glad it did though. Well, it happens sometimes.
right.
The
As conversations go,
we got deep into Rumi with MacLeod a few weeks ago.
sure.
Actually, the Ricardos went that way. Quite a few of them go that way in different ways.
Yeah, I thought I was just gonna make a couple of jokes.
I feel like we still need to have that podcast where we walk through your tango career and so we'll have to do that another time. Um,
Yeah, I think you got a sense of it. I think this is pretty good.
we're supposed to plug that Nyan is going to come on next week. Nyan's another person who came on some of the early programs to give a short report from the front lines, but we never actually did the whole interview with.
Yeah,
So that's coming up next week.
yeah. She has tons to say. I watched her fundraiser last week.
Me too.
Yeah,
There was some
uh,
amazing performances.
yeah. It was good. It made me donate.
Me too.
Yeah, I was like, why am I donating? It was out of body. I just pulled out my phone, like, what am I doing? And bloop.
If anyone's wondering what we're talking about, there's a KPCC fundraiser. You can still concert. You can still probably find it online, and there were a lot of great performances. My favorite was the one. I mean, now we're just so off to it, people don't even know what we're referring to. But there was a
Yeah,
performance. What was the guy's name? He's an actor.
DJ or
His
not.
synthesizer, his keyboard broke in the middle of the performance, and without missing a beat or anything, he kind of shrugged, pulled a guitar off the wall, and just continued to play effortlessly what he had just
Yeah,
been playing on the keyboard. It really impressed us.
that's right. And then that's when I gave money to a good cause. I'm like, here you go, Nyan. Here's money for a good cause, for a great cause. um, yeah. How many of these interviews have you done?
I think something like 40 or 50 at this point.
Wow.
At the beginning, it was like 3 a day, and then lately it's more like maybe 3 a month. So,
Amazing.
but it's very, very slowly evolving the format.
Sure.
At some point, maybe we'll even, well, I don't know, could go in a lot of different directions. But for now, we're just plugging away at it.
Right
Is there
on.
anything you'd like to leave us with, Sachin?
Oh, like a button?
Yeah, like a button, if that's easier for you to understand.
Um, oh no. I'll just yeah. I'll just leave you with this thought. I don't think people should be reviewing businesses online.
Oh,
I know this is a bad time to bring it up, but I don't. I'm an attorney. I got my only review, and it was a 1-star review over a very disgruntled client, and it made me thinking. I will never review anybody online.
yeah,
I will only say nice things.
yeah.
I will do that.
It's not that. Would it be fair to say that it's violent to give someone a bad review online?
It's very not Jane. It's complete. It's a very violent. It's violence of thought and speech and action. It is a trifecta of violence.
Especially when you use it to extort and coerce business owners by threatening to give them bad reviews if they don't just give you unreasonable things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Terrible.
All right, we're on the same page there.
Great to talk with you, Dave.
That was so good to talk to you. I can't wait to
Fun.
do it again.
Yeah.
All right, well then we're going to close out the show and just say goodnight to everyone. We'll be back next week with Nyan. This has been Sachin Mehta. Good night, Sachin. Good night, everyone.
Hi, Dave. Good night, everybody.